So, here's the deal. Life doesn't always knock politely. Sometimes it slams the door, sometimes it whispers, and sometimes it gives you one shot, one moment. That decides everything. Most people shrug it off, laugh it away, pretend they didn't see it. But that's the trap. You ignore it, and the ground slips out from under you. You think you've got time. You think chances repeat, but they don't. One wrong move, one blind eye, and suddenly everything you thought was safe starts crumbling. Small warnings carry big consequences. That's the trick, isn't it? Everyone's waiting for disaster to announce itself with fireworks, with alarms blaring, with a neon sign that says, "Danger ahead." But life doesn't work like that. It never does. The biggest disasters, the ones that rip your life apart, they start small. They come as little cracks in the wall, whispers in the dark, a faint itch in the back of your mind. You brush them off, call them nothing, convince yourself they don't matter. And then one day, that tiny little crack has spread so far, the whole thing comes crashing down. And you swear you never saw it coming. But you did. You just ignored it. The world is full of warnings, but most people are too comfortable to pay attention. They mistake silence for safety. They mistake stillness for stability. But silence hides signals, and stability is fragile. That uneasy feeling in your chest, the subtle shift in the air, the quiet voice that tells you something's off. That's not paranoia. That's a warning. And when you ignore it, you pay. Because life doesn't waste energy shouting at people who don't listen. It just whispers once, twice, maybe 3 times, and then it delivers the consequence. And by then, it's too late to undo. Think about how many people lose everything, not because of one huge mistake, but because of dozens of little ones they ignored. The little compromises, the red flags they laughed away, the choices they told themselves they'd fix later. All those small warnings added up, stacking on top of each other until they became a mountain too heavy to move. And when it finally collapses, it looks like sudden destruction. But it wasn't sudden. It was patient. It was building while you were looking the other way. That's the danger of ignoring the small things. They don't scream. So you think they don't matter. You tell yourself, "I'll deal with it tomorrow. I'll fix it later. It's just one time." But warnings don't care about your excuses. They're signals, not suggestions. They're reality tapping you on the shoulder, testing if you're awake. And if you prove you're not, reality doesn't keep tapping. It pushes you face first into the ground. The little things always matter more than people want to admit. The tone in someone's voice when they're drifting away. The hesitation before you make a choice you know is wrong. The moment you feel tired but keep pushing anyway. These are signals. They're not random. They're messages. Ignore them long enough, and they turn into pain, loss, regret. Because the universe has one rule. What you ignore doesn't disappear. It grows. And here's the cruel part. Small warnings don't just vanish when you dismiss them. They pile up. They compound. The consequence always arrives bigger than the warning. You ignore a whisper, you get a shout. You ignore the shout. You get an explosion. By the time the explosion hits, you're left wondering why everything fell apart, when in reality, it started with that tiny signal you brushed off weeks, months, even years ago. The truth is, nothing destroys a person faster than arrogance. The arrogance of thinking you can ignore the signs and get away with it. The arrogance of thinking you've got time, that you're in control, that consequences only happen to other people. But the cracks don't care about your confidence. They keep spreading whether you believe in them or not. And when the wall falls, it doesn't ask if you're ready. It just crushes everything beneath it. Small warnings carry big consequences because they're not optional. They're invitations to act, to pay attention, to shift before the collapse. Most people won't because small feels safe. Small feels ignorable. But that's the trick. The danger doesn't come when it's big. The danger comes when it's small, when it's quiet, when you're least expecting it. By the time it's big, it's already too late. Missed chances don't return. That's the cruel joke of life. You think opportunities are like buses. Miss one, another comes along. Maybe in the small things, sure. But the big ones, the ones that could change everything, they don't circle back. They knock once, maybe twice if you're lucky. And if you're too distracted, too stubborn, too blind to answer, they vanish. And when they vanish, they don't just leave quietly. They take something from you. The future you could have had. The version of yourself that might have lived differently if you had just moved when the door was open. People fool themselves with the idea of next time. Next time I'll be ready. Next time I'll be braver. Next time I'll listen. But there is no guarantee of a next time. Sometimes the moment is the moment, and once it's gone, it doesn't repeat. That relationship you ignored, that chance you laughed off, that risk you didn't take, they don't line up again on your doorstep. You might find something else, but it won't be the same. You'll spend years trying to patch the hole of the chance you lost, and the cruel part is, you'll know deep down that it was your choice. Missed chances leave scars you can't erase. You replay them in your head at night, telling yourself you were right. You were smart. You were protecting yourself. But eventually the truth creeps in. You realize it wasn't wisdom, it was fear. Not patience, but hesitation. And the world doesn't reward hesitation. It punishes it. Opportunities don't stand still while you decide if you're worthy. They move, with or without you. And once they're gone, they don't wait for your apology. That's why regret is heavier than failure. Failure at least teaches you something. You tried, you fought, you learned. But a missed chance, it teaches you nothing but what you could have had. It burns. Because you'll never know what might have been if you had just stepped forward. People don't regret what they did half as much as they regret what they didn't do. Silence eats louder than mistakes. And here's the trick. Opportunities rarely look obvious. They don't come wrapped in gold with a sign saying, "This is your shot." They come disguised. They come at inconvenient times, in uncomfortable ways, when you don't feel ready. And that's why so many miss them. They're too busy waiting for perfect conditions, the right moment, the safe path. But perfect doesn't exist. Readiness is a lie. If you wait until you feel ready, the chance will already be gone. Missed chances don't return because they're not random. They're tailored. That door that opened was meant for you at that exact time, with all your flaws, fears, and doubts included. If you ignore it, it doesn't get reassigned like a package. It dissolves. Maybe another door will open down the road, but it won't lead to the same place. And you'll always wonder what was behind the first one. People comfort themselves by saying, everything happens for a reason. Sure, maybe, but not every reason is a gift. Sometimes the reason is punishment. The reason is a lesson carved deep into your bones, so you'll never forget how it felt to let the moment slip away. The reason is to remind you that hesitation is expensive, and you're the one who pays the bill. The harsh truth is, most people won't lose everything in one dramatic collapse. They'll lose it piece by piece, chance by chance, by letting doors close quietly while they stood frozen on the threshold. And then they'll wake up one day realizing their life is smaller than it should have been, not because fate was cruel, but because they ignored the knock when it came. Missed chances don't return, because they were never meant to wait for someone too scared to answer. Comfort blinds you to danger. That's the sweet poison, isn't it? You get cozy, you get used to the softness of the pillow, the warmth of the routine, and you start convincing yourself that everything is fine. The edges blur, the alarms fade, and suddenly the cage feels like a home. People don't notice how dangerous comfort is because it doesn't look like a threat. It looks like safety. It feels like peace. But really, it's a trap dressed in velvet, and the more you sink into it, the harder it becomes to climb out when the fire starts spreading. Comfort numbs you. It takes the sharpness out of your instincts. You stop looking for cracks in the walls because you tell yourself there aren't any. You ignore the strange sound in the distance, the uneasy shift in the air, because comfort whispers, "Don't worry, you're fine." And the more you listen, the more blind you become. Danger doesn't need to scream at someone who's asleep. It just waits. Because when you're too comfortable, you won't even see it until it's already wrapped around your throat. That's how people lose everything. Not because the threat was invisible, but because they chose not to see it. They were too busy clutching their little blanket of comfort, pretending the world outside couldn't touch them. They forget that comfort is fragile. It doesn't shield you. It distracts you. And when the storm comes, comfort is the first thing ripped away, leaving you exposed, unprepared. Weak from all the time you spent sitting still instead of sharpening your edge. The truth is, nothing kills more dreams, more relationships, more futures than comfort. It whispers, "Stay here. Don't move. You've done enough." And people listen, thinking they're safe, thinking the danger will pass them by. But the danger feeds on that stillness. It grows stronger while you grow weaker. And by the time you realize what's happening, you're trapped in chains you built yourself. Comfort isn't protection. It's paralysis. And the cruelest part, comfort feels earned. You tell yourself you deserve to rest, to relax, to finally breathe. And maybe you do for a moment. But when that moment stretches into days, weeks, years, it transforms into something else. It stops being rest and becomes decay. Muscles that aren't used grow soft. Instincts that aren't sharpened grow dull. Fire that isn't fed goes out. Comfort blinds you to all of it because it wraps the decay in sweetness. So you don't notice you're rotting until it's too late. Look at anyone who's fallen hard. The warning signs were always there. The cracks in the system, the flaws in the relationship, the weaknesses in the plan. But comfort convinced them not to look too closely. It's fine. Comfort says, don't stress, don't worry, just enjoy. And they did, until the cracks split wide open and swallowed everything they had. Comfort isn't your friend. It's the soft hand covering your eyes while the knife creeps closer. The world punishes the comfortable. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually, because comfort is unnatural. Life is movement, growth, struggle, adaptation. When you stop moving, when you stop pushing, when you settle into the soft cushions and tell yourself the fight is over, you're already falling behind. The danger doesn't need to outrun you. It just needs to wait while you sit still, blind and smiling, until it's too late to get back up. Comfort blinds you, not because it steals your sight, but because it convinces you there's nothing to see. And that lie is more dangerous than any storm, because at least with a storm, you know to run. With comfort, you stay put, smiling, until the floodwaters rise above your head. Ignoring truth destroys stability. That's the trick about lies. They don't need to be huge to ruin you. A small one, whispered enough times, becomes the foundation you start building on. And at first, it feels solid. You walk on it, you rest on it. You convince yourself it'll hold. But the truth doesn't care about what you believe. It waits. It presses against the cracks, and sooner or later, the whole thing collapses, dragging you down with it. Stability built on denial is nothing more than a house of cards, and one breath of reality will send it crashing. People think they can outsmart the truth, outrun it, bury it under enough noise and distractions, and for a while it works. They laugh, they smile, they pretend the foundation is unshakable, but inside they know. That knowing in the gut, that sleepless night, that quiet voice reminding them something's wrong. That's the truth knocking. And when you keep ignoring it, the knocking doesn't stop. It grows heavier, more violent, until it breaks down the door. And by then, the damage is worse than it had to be. Stability doesn't come from pretending. It doesn't come from looking the other way. It comes from facing the ugly, the uncomfortable, the inconvenient. But people avoid that because they'd rather cling to the illusion. It feels easier to pretend things are fine, to tell themselves the cracks aren't there. The problem is, illusions don't hold weight. They crumble under pressure. And when they crumble, they don't just fall quietly. They take everything with them. That's why so many lives collapse without warning. Not because the collapse was sudden, but because the truth was ignored for too long. Every ignored red flag, every dismissed warning, every lie you told yourself, it all piles up. And when the truth finally breaks through, it doesn't just crack the surface, it rips apart the entire structure. You don't just lose balance. You lose everything you thought was holding you steady. Ignoring the truth doesn't erase it. It multiplies it. The more you push it away, the louder it comes back. The more you bury it, the deeper it roots. And when it finally rises, it's stronger, meaner, harder to deal with. That's why people end up shocked when their world collapses. They act like it came out of nowhere, but deep down they knew. They just didn't want to deal with it when it was small. So it grew into something they couldn't escape. And here's the cruel part: the truth doesn't need your permission. It doesn't care about your denial, your excuses, your carefully built story. It stands unshaken. While your lies wobble and fall, you can ignore it for a season, but eventually it demands payment. And the longer you've ignored it, the higher the price. People lose relationships, jobs, families, futures. Not because the truth wasn't there, but because they thought ignoring it would keep them safe. It never does. Stability isn't about comfort. It isn't about telling yourself everything's fine. It's about building on something that won't crack under weight. And the only thing strong enough to hold is the truth. Ugly or not, hard or not, inconvenient or not, the truth is solid. Everything else is quicksand. You can stand on lies for a while, maybe even dance on them, but eventually they give way. And when they do, they don't just swallow you. They swallow everything you built on top of them. Ignoring truth destroys stability because it rots the foundation while you're busy decorating the walls. You think the house is strong because it looks good, but deep down it's hollow. And when the storm hits, it doesn't matter how nice the paint is. It doesn't matter how much you smiled while you were pretending. The foundation gives out, and the whole thing collapses, leaving you standing in the rubble of your own denial. Every decision shifts the future. People like to believe their choices are small, harmless, forgettable, but that's the biggest joke of all. You move one piece on the board, and suddenly the whole game changes. A word you speak, a step you take, a door you open or slam shut, it all echoes. Maybe not right away, maybe not tomorrow. But eventually those echoes bounce back, and when they do, they shape the life you're standing in. The scariest part. Most don't even notice the shift until it's too late to walk it back. It's easy to shrug and say, "It doesn't matter." That's how people excuse themselves when they cut corners, when they walk away, when they choose the easy road instead of the right one. But nothing is isolated. Every decision has teeth, and those teeth bite sooner or later. What feels like a tiny choice now grows into a chain reaction, leading you places you never thought you'd go. That's why life feels unpredictable, because people forget they're the ones pushing the dominoes. Think about it. A single yes can rewrite the entire script. A single no can save you or destroy you. The friends you keep, the risks you take, the lies you tell yourself, the truth you avoid. It all adds weight to the future. And that future bends under it, reshaping itself with every move you make. One wrong step doesn't just trip you. It reroutes the entire path ahead. You can't always see it in the moment, but later, when you look back, the pattern is obvious. Every crack in the mirror started with one fracture. Every collapse started with one choice. The mind tricks you into thinking only the big decisions matter. Marriage, career, money, the kind of choices people label as life-changing. But the truth is, it's the small ones. The words you speak when you're angry, the effort you skip because you're tired, the time you waste because you think you've got plenty left, that shape the future just as much. Futures aren't built in giant leaps. They're carved slowly, choice by choice, until you realize you've created a reality you either love or hate. And here's where it gets dangerous. You never know which decision carries the most weight. That's why people regret. They look back at something small, something they thought was meaningless, and realize it shifted everything. That one ignored opportunity. That one careless mistake. That one conversation they didn't have. Regret is just the recognition that decisions bend time, and you bent it in the wrong direction. But by then, the future's already shifted, and you're standing in the wreckage of your own choices. Every decision you make pulls something closer and pushes something else away. That's the law of it. You can't choose one road without abandoning another. You can't say yes without killing a no. You can't avoid a choice without still making one, because even doing nothing is a decision, and it carries just as much weight. That's the part most people don't get. They think staying still protects them, keeps the future safe. But the future doesn't stay still. It moves, with or without you. And your hesitation becomes the decision that shapes it. The world is nothing but a chain of outcomes, tied together by every action, every word, every hesitation. That's why chaos spreads so easily, because people don't realize how much power they carry in a single moment. You don't need to blow up the bridge to change the future. You just need to take the wrong step while crossing it. That's all it takes. And suddenly, you're not where you thought you'd be. Suddenly, everything is different. Every decision shifts the future because life is fragile and direction is everything. You're either bending time toward strength or weakness, toward growth or decay, toward freedom or chains. But one thing is certain, nothing stays the same. The moment you choose, the world rearranges itself around that choice. And you're left walking through the world you created, whether you meant to or not.